Well, greetings, everyone. I'm Vicky Soma, and welcome to another episode of How Would You Slice That? It's a kind of pseudo-regular live stream series where we're trying to combine 3D printing community time with slicing tips, strategies, and tours. As always, I have my co-host here, Lawrence Nightingale.
Hello, everybody. Hello,
Yeah.
Vicky. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. If you're not familiar with Lawrence, he's been 3D printing for over 11 years, and he is an educator, and he has personally taught over 500 people in the Northern Virginia area about 3D printing. And one of his skill sets that I didn't know until we started doing this live stream is he's really good at flattering other people in their introductions, as you're going to see momentarily.
My co-host is the wonderful Vicky Soma. She is a leader in the 3D printing community. She was instrumental in building and growing and sustaining the East Coast RepRap Festival, now to be called 3D Printopia. She is an early adopter of multicolor 3D printing and has incredible expertise in design. One of the most notable achievements that she's done, what she has done that you have not done, is she has designed a 3D print that has been featured in an actual Hollywood movie. And so I am really, really glad to be here on a Prime Tuesday with Vicky. What's going on?
Not much. Happy that my kids are back in school for after spring break. Though we had some delightful a lot of screen time and a lot of activity time. How about you, Lawrence?
Spring break is actually still in full swing. Actually, today's the last day of spring break. So for my spring break, what I wound up doing is gardening. I redid my flower gardens in the front of my house, and I'm putting in something called a wicking garden. WICKING, wicking. And what happens is that you put water in one place and you place a wick underneath your crop, and you put water in like essentially a cistern, and it waters continuously through the summer. I also pulled out 2 trees with my bare hands. So
do you have any pictures of that? We'll have to show that.
You know what? I was the only person out there doing it, but I do have evidence of it being removed from the ground. Yes, it took me the better part of 5 or 6 hours to do, but I did it.
So maybe that's what I'll put in your introduction next time, is also can remove trees with his bare hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I also worked on a project. My cousin called me. She does party planning, but we'll get to that later. Actually, why don't we get to our guest?
Okay. I'm telling the chat real quick that I need to not anger you now that I know what kind of strength that you have behind you.
My powers are only used for good, I promise.
All right, everyone. I'm excited about tonight's guest. Our guest in this episode has some impressive day job creds. He's worked on automation systems. He's traveled internationally to install and repair the likes of CNC machines and laser cutters. He's taught 3D printing for STEM programs, libraries, and schools. In addition to all of that, you may have seen him on BattleBots. He was the, quote, electronics wizard for the Team XD and the BattleBot Sub-Zero. And if you've been to any of the RepRap festivals or maybe even Bay Area Maker Faire, you may have seen him sporting one of his backpack printers, and that's plural, printers, plural. And one thing I know firsthand about this next guest is he is a most delightful Taco Bell date. So please welcome Mitch Cerroni.
Hey, Mitch, you're muted.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing great.
Thank you for having me.
Should we start off and just explain the backstory of the Taco Bell date, maybe?
Oh, yeah. I can explain it. So at my old makerspace, I was a member of the Dallas Makerspace, and they did an auction to raise money for the makerspace. And one of the auction items, somebody put me on as a Taco Bell dinner date. And so And then
Oh
plus
my
a
God, full
mixtape. I
screen.
actually did make a YouTube mixtape. Oh my God, I forgot about that. But yeah,
Because
so like I became famous for my Taco Bell dinner dates, and so we were at Earth. I think that was Earth 2019 or 2018, and Vicky wanted to.
yeah, I
go on the Taco
donated
Bell.
money, but I couldn't make it to Dallas
Yeah.
for the
Oh yeah,
Taco
that was
Bell
a great
date.
picture. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
good
but it
one.
took over a year, but he was good on that.
I feel I was funny because I memorized the menu basically because I'm there all the time. So I was like a concierge, like telling Vicky what is good on the menu. So so yeah, I'm always down for Taco Bell if anybody wants.
Yeah, and you go to pretty much all of the RepRap festivals and everything.
Yeah, I've been to almost all of them.
I don't know if I noticed this back in 2017 when you did this, but I like the inclusion of the Pepto-Bismol in the bouquet.
Yeah, so that was my friend Nicole Francois. She was the one who put me up on it, and she's an art teacher at a high school, and she's just amazing. She just likes to organize stuff and be creative and stuff. So she made that was part of the auction item, but I just thought it was so funny.
It sold me. It totally sold me, but I did not get a mixtape, so just keep that in mind for.
Yeah, what did you end up
3D
ordering?
Printopia.
I'm wondering about that. I don't remember.
If I had to guess, I think I would put my money on the Dorito tacos because I really like the Dorito
that's a
tacos.
good one.
Yeah. And now so Taco Bell 2019, they had the double-decker taco.
Yeah, and now they have the double stack, which is similar to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was sad that they got rid of the double-decker taco because they would put the refried beans between the tortilla and the taco shell.
Yeah.
Favorite, yeah. And they also got rid of the enchilado cup like way before, I think before COVID, but that was one of my favorites too.
they stopped me from coming into Taco Bell, or they renamed it. You have to kind of almost order off the menu for a Mexi Melt. The Mexi Melt.
Oh yeah, the Mexi Melt. I remember that. Yeah.
That was the thing that I got when I went to Taco Bell.
Yeah, like I said, I guess I'm now the Taco Bell expert. If I can. actually, I think Yum Brands, they have an office in the DFW area, and there was an opening for their internal makerspace, and I would have loved to do that.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. But no, they wanted somebody on like a higher level. But yeah, that would have been kind of cool to do. A Taco Bell brand makerspace.
Yeah. I mean, Taco Bell and all the other things that are under that heading. I mean, tons of things. I mean, you think about all the taco holders and sauce spreaders and things that you could get into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, cool. So now, yeah. So Mitch, when did you first start 3D printing?
Oh my God, I'm old, I guess. I mean, for 3D printing, I'm old. So yeah, back in I left college, moved back home to Fort Worth, where I grew up, and around that time I was in college. They had a Stratasys U print, and I never could get time on it, and then I was gonna do like a senior project kind of with 3D printing. I wanted to do some like automated assembly thing. I never got around to it, and 3D printing was way too early for me to even like make that work. But around that time, I was reading Make Magazine all the time.
Yes,
and make the Make Zine blog, and so I was very familiar with Bree Pettis and the MakerBot team.
Oh, okay.
And I was also very familiar with the RepRap project and the original Mendel. I looked at building a Mendel, and there wasn't too many options out there. You could buy like the printed parts kits from eBay. Some people were actually selling the Mendel kits back then, but it was a lot of work. And then the MakerBot kind of got a lot of hype. So like I got a So I ended up ordering a MakerBot cupcake. 2010.
That's the wooden one. The wooden one, right?
Yeah, the wooden one.
The wooden one sold for like $2,000.
It was. I think it was actually less. It was like $7.99. It came with.
Was it?
It was a laser cut kit, but it was really bad. I mean, for the time, it was awesome.
Amazing. It was amazing for the time.
But yeah, like it was all laser cut plywood parts. The stage was an XY stage. The actual build volume was, I think, 100 millimeter cubed. The original build platform was a piece of laser cut acrylic, and the only filament they had was 3 millimeter ABS that was in bundles. It was in bundles. You couldn't. It wasn't actually. This was before spools, like really. And so,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, like you print with a raft and hope that it sticks.
Yeah,
and there was no way to level the bed too, so it was all plywood. So the stage was on bushings, and the bushings had so much play in it that you could like wobble the print bed, like
wow.
And I think you have to use tape to like shim it level. And then the first layer, the first thing you did was you printed a little hand crank, and the Z-axis was 4 lead screws, and so with a belt path, and so you'd actually have to like manually adjust the Z as it was printing the first layer, and that was your manual Z height adjustment. And so you try to get it to squish in there with a really thick raft. And then you basically printed everything with a raft. And then they had a heated build platform, which it worked out a lot better. But just the print quality was so inconsistent because the original MakerBot cupcake had a DC gear motor and an acrylic extruder. And the hot end was actually a brass barrel where you wrapped nichrome wire around it.
Nice.
Yeah. So the old school way of doing it. And it was just it was janky, but it worked. Like it was enough to get me into 3D printing. But I was more interested in my ideal of why I got into 3D printing was because I wanted to build combat robot parts.
You wanted to build combat robot parts?
Combat robots.
Combat.
So I did. So in the early 2000s, because I was really into BattleBots and Robot Wars, I found a local club that had they fought the little like 1 pound robots, and that's actually how I met Logan and the people from Sub-Zero. But that they were in the Comedy Central days back, and they actually fought on the Comedy Central. So we actually was friends with Brady and Logan on the Sub-Zero team.
Wow!
But this was back then, yeah. But the Comedy Central days. But we would fight these little 1 pound combat robots in a office park somewhere in DFW, and so I was just fascinated with like machining and CNC and stuff. And my dad had Harbor Freight, like a mill and lathe, so I learned, and welder. So I learned how to weld and all that stuff from my dad as well.
Wow.
So around the same time, I was like, and then when around college, when I was seeing that you could build your own CNC machine and your own 3D printer now, that the technology was more accessible, I was either going to get a CNC machine to make robot parts, or I was going to get a 3D printer, and a 3D printer is more accessible than the CNC machine. So
and quieter, if you can believe it.
Yeah. And now I have a CNC machine and a 3D printer and a laser cutter. So it worked out in the end, but it took 10 years, 12 years.
Wow. To do that, okay. So you've been printing for now, were you in engineering? What was your major in college?
I didn't finish, but it was called robotics and it was robotics and embedded systems. So it was basically like a computer science degree that was kind of tailored to robotics. It was kind of a unique program because we started out with the basic stamp, the BattleBots, Board of Education robots, and we did some AT-Mega programming, C#, C# assembly. When we got into programming, I did not do well, and so I've always been struggling to be a programmer, but I like the other aspects of robotics that don't involve the programming. But
absolutely.
Yeah, so the other parts of hardware robotics, so like the electronics and now I think with the robotics, there's so much that has been done in like AI and stuff and ROS and it's I think it's more accessible now than it's ever been, especially with educational robots.
Right.
So
yeah, educational robots like with first team robotics and
yeah, the first robotics has gotten so advanced, and also like my high school didn't have first robotics. So in high school with the group that I met, there was BattleBots IQ, and BattleBots IQ was a high school division of BattleBots, and so I with the other they were in high school as well. My friend Phil and Casey from that local robot combat group, they were in different high schools, so we actually kind of went as like an independent team.
Wow. Okay.
And so we went 2 years, 2003, 2004, and we had a robot called Demonic, and it was like I don't know, it was like a disc spinner, vertical spinner.
Oh boy.
So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about like machining and welding, and it was fun.
Yeah.
So that's how kind of I got into BattleBots before I actually was on BattleBots, the show.
Wow. And so you've worked with multiple platforms, programming, 3D printing, CNC.
Yeah. I try to do everything.
What slicers did you work with? Let's say come to
MakerBot. Yeah, so the MakerBot was it used a program called Replicator G, or Replicator,
okay,
if you remember that. And I think the RepRap hardware, I think it was like Sailfish back then, before Marlin. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It ran on the Sanguino, but the slicer was Skyforge, which is a Python written slicer. Yeah. And I didn't, and that was back like I just basically was on the MakerBot forum, and I didn't really know anything about the slicers. Yeah, I actually did use matter control on the CME CNC. So when I got a CME CNC
matter control
Delta printer, matter control actually was nice because it would allow you to edit the EEPROM values on the Delta printer, so you could calibrate it.
Right.
But yeah, so basically after, I think I used Kira on some machines. It was really just depending on which printer I was working on. And then I did work for, when I joined the Dallas Makerspace, that was 2014. They have a company that was kind of founded from the Makerspace called Polyprinter, and they build like enclosed printers that were really fast for the time. And they were fully enclosed so they could print ABS parts. And so our makerspace had four of them at the time. They ended up getting I got 7 of them later. But what was cool about it is that it was a local like family business, and they built the printers in-house in their garage, and they basically would service the DFW area for schools and businesses. So they would sell a printer with a service warranty. And so I worked for them for about, I think like about a year. Basically, I worked for them part-time, and I would actually travel to schools and set up the printers and teach people. So they set up their profiles for KISS Slicer. So a lot of the stuff I actually used was their printers with KISS Slicer. And then I remember the PrinterBot Simple. I don't think I actually had one, but I think I used the Makerspaces. And I ended up using Kira for that one. But it wasn't really until Simplify 3D came out that I basically just switched. I just used Simplify 3D for everything up until probably 2020. Really recently, then I switched to, Prusa Slicer. When Prusa Slicer got customizable supports, I think is when I switched over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That long? It's amazing that you've gone through so many slicers, because KISS Slicer was not nearly as simple.
It was it was complicated, and I only used it because that was kind of what they tuned their profiles for the poly printers. But for my personal printers, I built a Mendel 90. I built a custom Delta from RepRap. Richard Horn had a custom Delta printer.
The 3D printed one, the 3D printed one that the top.
I've seen called the 3DR, and my first RepRap that I actually built.
So that 3DR,
after the MakerBot Cupcake, I ended up giving the MakerBot Cupcake to my friend who was at university, and his lab. He was doing the haptic feedback glove I don't know if my friend Peter. And now he has a company called Haptic Solutions that actually makes a scent device for VR. So we helped prototype it, and so him and I joined the makerspace. We could use the poly printers, and those were much better printers back then in 2014. But yeah, no, since then I basically have built a Mendel 90. I've had a couple of the early Chinese printers, but most of my printers have been the CME CNC Delta printers. So
and so the RepRap 3D printer.
Yeah.
How hard was that to keep stable?
I never got it calibrated. That was early Marlin 1. I don't know, like 4 maybe. And there you had to manually enter all the delta parameters, and I didn't understand, the tuning and all that stuff until basically I think it was just too complicated for my first printer. So I ended up building a Mendel 90, which was a really good platform. The Mendel 90 was a great RepRap platform. So was
that the A-frame one?
It was built with die bond, so it was like panels. I got the kit from Knophead, Chris Knophead, and he had a kit, and I ordered some of the parts from him in the UK. But and then I built one for the makerspace. Actually, I did a class on how to build a RepRap at the makerspace. So we built a Mendel 90 at the makerspace. So I kind of did both those. But basically in 2016, early 2016, the Eris. So this is kind of my other claim to fame. This has kind of started me off on the whole Delta printer thing. So this Eris, you can't really see it that much, but it's a little. It was like a ready to print, ready to go, like retail machine that could. Actually, let me just show you. I actually have 2 of them now, but
2.
This is the Eris, so it's a little injection molded 3D Delta printer,
right?
That CME CNC made, and so they actually injection mold all the parts, and it was all like pre-assembled, ready to go out of a box.
Wow!
And then that actually was the basis for my first
your backpack printer.
Yeah. So I love this printer, and I did so much with it, and I had a lot of trial and error, and it would fail, and I had to fix it and trying to.
Of course.
But that was like my first Delta printer that actually worked after building the RepRap one. And then the backpack printer was because I think I was talking to John Ollie, and I think we were just joking about like how it's like a really cool like portable printer. But I went to a couple of conventions with that printer, and I would just carry it around the event, and then I did a panel on cosplay or something at a Comic-Con or something like that, like a local event, and with a couple other people, and I brought it and I printed a little Pikachu and stuff, and people loved it because it was just a little printer that you could just set up really easily. And because of that, and the fact that it's 12 volts and it's really lightweight, I was like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if I could carry it around so I don't have to like sit at a convention? I could just carry it around the convention and have a exhibit. So I was going to Bay Area Maker Faire a couple times. I've been to Bay Area Maker Faire before they kind of closed down and started up again. And so I wanted something to kind of present there, and then that happened. So I CNC cut a plywood frame, and then 3D printed parts that basically clamp that printer to the frame. And then I had a fanny pack. I made my own straps out of floor mat EVA foam and strapping.
Okay.
And then the batteries were lithium polymer batteries from an RC car. And then I shoved and then I had there we go.
I stole this from his.
You have my slide. Oh, this is embarrassing now. This is actually, the whole slide shows the whole history of my backpack printer. So
awesome.
Go for it. And that actually is not updated because I actually did more to the second generation backpack printer since then. But this is basically how the first backpack printer got created in 2018. I think it took me less than a month to make, like before the event, before Murph. So yeah,
Mhm.
Murph was
month?
my first
Less
one.
than a month?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it
Oh.
was, the printer itself was as good as it was gonna be, and the frame took like maybe a weekend to make, and then really the only thing was designing the spool holder design and the strapping.
Mhm.
The strapping took like another couple days to figure out.
Yeah, and you mounted the spool underneath.
Yeah, and that actually is a Lazy Susan bearing that's screwed into the bottom of the frame, and then I
Nice.
because the fan, the case fan is actually on the bottom. The spool holder I designed to be a screw together, so I could
Mhm.
adjust it to different thickness of spools, but holds it
Right.
tightly, and then it has a hole in the center so that the air can actually go into the case fan,
Right.
and it holds it in the right place under my, basically around my butt. So, and what's actually on this one, I have a Pi Zero and a Pi Cam, and so actually the Pi Zero is running Octoprint. So I actually had an Octoprint server running the printer, and I could see behind me, but the problem is the Wi-Fi was really bad on it, so I couldn't really get it to connect to my phone reliably on the hotspot. But yeah, and the other problem with that is lithium polymer batteries are really volatile, and I had battery alarms on them, and they'll basically, if you over discharge them, you'll start to ruin the batteries, and they're also a fire hazard.
Fire risk.
So,
I was
I've used
I was
those
gonna
same
mention
batteries for a while.
I was gonna mention the fire risk part.
Oh yeah, and it was on the fanny pack in like front of
Right
me.
in front
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot about battery technology just doing this project. But I use
Right.
those batteries on the next generation backpack printer, and
Mhm.
um,
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have the new backpack printer, but yeah, actually I was using a Bird Air, which is an aquarium air pump specifically for part cooling, because
Oh.
the built-in part cooling fan was not good. There wasn't a good one. It was just, so that helped a lot with the part cooling. But I ended up since then, after the backpack printer, I did the second backpack printer, but I basically rebuilt the Aris now with Clipper, and I redid the effector. So now it's using a Revo Micro, two part cooling fans, dedicated part cooling fans, and a LCD controller, and it's all clipperized. So I basically rebuilt the Aris. So now the Aris, and then I talked to Steve from CMCNC, and he liked the stuff I was doing with it. So he actually re-released the Aris as a kit, and that's what I'm building here. So you can actually now buy the Aris as a kit without the controller or the hot end, and then build your own hot end.
Wow. Yeah, because I've traveled in the Delta circles quite a bit myself. I was definitely a Delta enthusiast.
So you know a lot about like the Rostock Max and everything.
Yeah. I own 3 Rostock Maxes.
Nice.
And I built a custom Rostock using that 1-inch extrusion. Thanks a lot, CMC.
Which is what the H2 is based on, is the Rostock Max.
Yeah.
The H2 was a kit printer that could be really cheaply built from like Rostock parts, basically. So it was like a smaller Rostock Max that they could laser cut. They laser cut the parts. But on the backpack printer, the second generation backpack printer that used that frame, Matt from 713 Maker, he has a machine shop, and he custom machined aluminum parts for the H2, which is used on my second generation backpack printer.
I've got some stuff from them actually. I've got an effector from them for
I have the effector mount for the Duet smart effector too.
Right.
So I switched over to Duet smart effectors a couple years ago, and because they're more reliable than the original hot end or original effector for the CMCNC stuff.
Right. It's CMCNC, they did a lot of innovating. But one thing I wanted to ask you related to slicing is Did you have to run things slower off of your backpack printer? Like, were you did you have to do anything with the currents on the motors, or did you have to do anything with the speed?
The Aris is not a good printer mobile. It works once you get it started, it's fine. It's a lot more wobbly when I'm moving around on it. But the Aris, like before I did the Clipper install, if you could get the first layer to be reliable, it would print at its like default profile for
Really?
or whatever. But its default was like 30 millimeters a second at most.
But still, though, you're able to do it while you're walking around, which is
they were I mean, that's how it worked. It was the problem was it used an accelerometer originally, like the original Rostock Max, and the Aris was built to have an accelerometer that would actually just ram the nozzle into the bed and detect the change, and that's how it did its calibration. It was using Repetier host as a Repetier firmware, right? Repetier firmware, and so they modified Repetier firmware to use an accelerometer as a auto calibration for the Delta printer.
I had the one of the 3D printing labs that I supervised. They used it had the CME CNC version of their smart effector with the accelerometer, but for the longest time, Duet highly recommended that you not use contact as a way to calibrate the deltas using that smart effector. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then they did force sensing resistors, but on the current the clipperized Aris that I have now, the manual delta calibration where you just use a piece of paper and manually go down and probe it, and that's the best solution for that. And so if I was to build a delta printer nowadays, honestly, I would just rather manually calibrate, because as long as the printer isn't moving, as long as the towers aren't moving and your offsets aren't changing, and the bed's not moving, like you can manually calibrate once and you really don't have to calibrate again.
It's really interesting that you say that. How did you find the experience of going from Repetier and all the other slicers that you've been using and the firmwares and going to goodness gracious, now I'm just blanked on it, to the new firmware,
the Duet firmware?
No, not Duet, your other slicer, doggone it, the fast one now.
Clipper,
yes, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, Clipper is easy. Well, it's easy if you understand how to install Clipper.
Yes.
The configs are actually, because there's a whole Delta calibration page, and Joe Mike, I still have the Artemis, and actually the Artemis has been my main printer for like since I got it. I ordered it back in 2017 is when I got it from. 2017 was the first Artemis, but I've had that printer for over 6 years now, and it's been rock solid. The only thing is I swapped the Artemis to the Duet Smart Effector, and I put a Revo and a Orbiter direct drive extruder on it, and that made that eliminated a lot of the problems with Bowden drive problems, a lot of issues with and I can print flexible materials, and it's just more reliable. But it did add a lot more weight to the effector head, so I can't. Yes. But the Artemis never really was a fast printer. Neither were the Rostocks. You can't. I couldn't really push it that fast.
Yeah, like you couldn't 100 millimeters a second or anything like that. But while when they came out, when they were brand new, or when they were just rolling out, they were the fastest. You couldn't really get a Prusa to move faster than.
Yeah, no, they printed better. They printed as good of quality on the Rostock V3 as you could probably get with a Prusa Mark II.
Yeah,
back in 2016. So, but I still use the Artemis. The Artemis was just a great printer. I used the Artemis for this. So this is the new backpack printer that I'm building, and all the parts have been printed. I'm doing this with SliceWorks, so I'm working with SliceWorks to build this backpack printer. But
okay.
I mean, it's all PLA Pro, and I printed ABS on it too. I just put some temporary foam side covers just to block the airflow, and I can print ABS on it. I've printed tons of Pit Pet G on it. I've done Nylon X. I've done all kinds of stuff on the Artemis, and it's been a super reliable printer. But no, the Artemis has been an awesome printer, and that's been my main printer. But the backpack printer, the second generation backpack printer, was based on the H2. And you could see I had a steel frame. When I worked at the CNC company, I was a field tech, so I would travel and fix CNC machines. So they had water jets as one of their machines. So
all right.
Yeah, so I water jet cut some steel and made the first backpack printer, or the second backpack printer. And so I wanted, because the Aris was really limited, I got the H2 when he was discontinuing the H2. And that's how I got the H2. And then Matt from 713 Maker made all the aluminum parts. And so I had some steel left over, and some scrap steel, and so I made the frame. I actually laser cut it out of plywood just to test fit it. I used an Amazon Basics Amazon Basics hiking backpack frame, and I took the frame off of it. I just used the straps. So the straps are from an Amazon Basics frame.
That was a lesson learned from your first printer, right? You laser cutted your straps, right?
And they were fine. They actually worked fine. You can see that. I mean, they work. It just it was such a pain because I had to sew them, or I had my roommate sew them actually at the time, but because I didn't know how to sew strapping. But I used barge glue, and the barge glue kept coming off the EVA foam, and the plywood frame, and it was just kind of loose. But yeah, there we go. Where was that from?
Was
that from the E30
as well?
I think it was from it was an article on Murph.
Oh, okay, that's a good picture. But yeah, that's the new one. So that's actually not the latest one. The latest one's the one from 20. So the latest one of that version, I updated that basically after COVID, and we didn't have a RepRap Festival until the one that I went to was Murph 2022. That was the first one back after COVID, and so I wanted to update the backpack printer, and then so I think I didn't do anything for that. I just used the old lithium polymer batteries, but then was it Earth 2020? Wait, that was last year. Earth 2022. I think I updated it for some reason. Anyway, it was Rocky Mountain, last year's Rocky Mountain RepRap Festival. Before that, Bob Carnes in the 3D printing community recommended lithium. It might be that one, or that's not the latest one. That was at Earth.
Yeah, this is 2022, and that's
So Justin actually wore it more than I did that weekend. And he was a trooper about it. But yeah, like just little details. Like I got rid of the that was back when I had the Bird Air pump. So they actually used the part cooling pump from the Bird Air, and it used the but basically for the Rocky Mountain 2023, I used lithium iron phosphate batteries because they had higher capacity. They had a built-in battery management system, BMS, so that I wouldn't over discharge them. They're much more stable chemistry. And instead of having it strapped to my waist, because I just had the lithium polymers just, basically zip tied to the waist strap, it was much more comfortable for me to put the battery on the frame. So there's just a spot behind the steel frame where I could put the battery. So I 3D printed these battery boxes that have a tab and a screw, and I can just basically quickly put it in there, put a little thumb screw in there, and it holds it to the frame rigidly. And then I made a splitter box that basically allows me to plug in the DC power supply when it's sitting. And then I have a toggle switch that switches between the DC power supply or the battery, so that I can select so I can basically switch it to the DC power supply, remove the battery, put a new battery that's charged, and then switch it back to battery only, and then remove the power supply. So that's how I do hot swapping batteries. But traditionally I use a parallel circuit. So I have two batteries or two power sources in parallel. and then I use a Schottky diode to prevent the batteries or the power sources from feeding back into each other. Yeah, crossing over.
I did not get any photos of the batteries to share.
Yeah, no, I don't have the latest one. But anyway, the other thing I did, that the biggest thing was I put the spool holder on the top of the backpack printer on the top of the Delta. So I did a horizontal spool holder using the same design as I used for the Aris on the bottom, but I put it on the top because that was the only place I could put it.
So it'd be up here.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. But
I'll pull up the Aris real quick. So just think about that on top.
Anyway, so yeah, the spool holder is now on the top of the frame, and the battery box is right behind your neck on the frame, behind the frame, and then basically what that made it is just more comfortable. So everything is on the frame itself, and so all you have to really do is just worry about putting the straps on and going. So on this third generation that I'm building, it's using I'm going to use the same batteries, but I'm going to try to switch to drill batteries because they're more accessible. The biggest thing is that the lithium iron phosphates that I have are 10 amp hour, 12 volt, and these Delta printers are 12 volt system, but newer printers are all 24 volt, and so I can run them in series to make a higher voltage. But the problem is that I can't fly with anything over 100 watt hours, right? So I have to have a certain watt hour amount, and if I want to travel with batteries, but these are batteries you can get on Amazon, but you have to wait for Amazon. So like if I was at an event and I needed to get more batteries or something happened, or just traveling with batteries, it's just easier to travel with drill batteries or buy them at a store, at any hardware store, right? So I think drill batteries might be better, and all drill batteries are 18650 packs, cell back. So I've considered making my own battery packs, but like traveling with stuff that looks suspicious, it's like,
lots of wires.
It's hard. It's just hard to travel with batteries that are custom made for the thing. So like the lithium polymers I used for the last event, when I flew to Earth last year, that was the lithium polymers. I use those. So but now they're pretty much dead. Like those lithium polymers just are dead, and I don't want to buy more. I would rather go with lithium iron phosphate in the future or drill batteries. But my other solution now is building a custom circuit that has MOSFETs and microcontroller that can monitor the voltage and switch between voltage sources automatically. So I don't waste energy on the Schottky diodes to like do the switching, and I can more accurately measure how much power I'm using while I'm walking around, because I didn't really have I had no way to know when the battery was going to cut out. I just I had to kind of just guess, or kind of based on the voltage that it was reading on the cell, I kind of guessed how much I had left, and then I would just go to my table, swap out from the charger, and then go back out on the floor and walk around. But sometimes you get caught like talking to somebody, or you're outside watching the death racers or something, and the batteries just stop, and then you ruin your print. And I've tried print recovery. I've tried to calibrate print recovery, but it doesn't always work. Like the head can just crash, if it loses power. I mean, there's nothing holding the head up. So I've had it try to like detect if it goes under like 11.5 volts and then just go up and park. But again, with 12 volt systems, you don't really have a lot of overhead before it stops working. If I was to do it again, I'm on this one, it's 24 volts. So I think I have better luck with a 24 volt system with power recovery. But it's just, I'm trying to make like a custom circuit board that will act like a UPS. And I think it'll be useful for other people in the future as well. So it's one of the projects I want to work on. Obviously, I don't have time because I'm just trying to get this one working. But
I'm sensing a coming pause.
Yeah.
Or I'm breaking myself in.
Okay, go
Mitch,
ahead.
I
Yeah.
just want to highlight a couple comments from the chat.
Yeah.
Some people, or Tech Jeeper, he's suggested a spool holder hat.
Yeah.
And then expanded on that, where you could do it on both sides, like Princess Leia. And then a while ago, let me see if I can find it. Karen was wondering, are you ever, like, you've gone through multiple iterations of this, or have you ever thought about selling backpack printer kits?
I don't think there's a market for it. I don't think it's really a practical thing anybody really wants to do. But that said, this third generation of this backpack printer is pretty replicatable. Like, it's not as custom as the other ones are.
Are you open to putting the files on
Oh yeah. No, all three of them. I don't
GitHub or something?
I don't have organized files for them. But the first two backpack printer frames, yeah, I can. But the problem is not many people. All the CBCNC files are open source, so the Eris and the H2 are available, and that's what I use to reference the frame design. So I could upload the frame design, but the problem is I don't think anybody would really want to do it. But this third one, I definitely have it mostly. It's basically all. It's all CAD modeled, so I mean, and it's using this one. I'm using the Kingroon KP3S, so it's a $150 printer that you can get from AliExpress or SliceWorks. SliceWorks sells this printer, but it's a cantilever bed slinger, 180 millimeter build volume, runs Marlin, has a direct drive extruder. It's real small and compact, so I have it mounted to a piece of aluminum, and that's actually going to be mounted to the frame. And then there's
I see.
Yeah, and so this next generation one, I can actually, if you want, I can show this real quick.
Yeah.
The hat, the comment about the hat. No, I was actually gonna put this printer on a helmet. But I had a lot of people advise me not to, and they're probably right. So, no, everybody's talked about helmets, and I am not willing to do a helmet. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sorry, my Fusion is updating, but I'll share it in a second. But I can kind of show what I'm working on here, but I don't want to cut it out, but
there it is.
So I'm printing, basically it's like a full enclosure. It's like a 3D printed enclosure that's going to mount to this extrusion subframe. And then the printer itself is going to be mounted to the extrusion like this. And then, yeah, the enclosure part goes around it, like, you can't really see it, but basically it's going to go around like that. And then the frame itself is it's a Mole 2 composite frame. A Mole 2 composite frame. So it's based on I think it's similar to like the Alice frame, but it's like a military tactical frame. And
it looks nice.
The straps are
light.
These straps are so a friend in the community, Chris, the 3D printing community, he actually sold me his old backpack frame. I guess I don't know if he got it from the military or what he used it for, but it's just a modular tactical frame. And I actually just bought red dye tonight so that I can try to dye the camo, because I don't like the camo color. So I'm gonna try to dye it later. But yeah, that's essentially the third backpack printer that I'm building.
Wow.
That one I think is easy enough and cheap enough to replicate, and you can use. I'd probably recommend like an Alice frame, because that's the most common hiking backpack frame. That's a steel frame, and they use it a lot for Ghostbusters proton packs. So
Oh, fun
that's
fact,
probably
then.
that's the most common rigid frame backpack that I could probably use.
Wow.
And then adapt this to work with that or this composite frame. And because if I made it work with like the Amazon Basics hiking backpack frame and then they stop selling it, like it's not a common thing, right? So like the Alice frame is a common thing, so I could make it work with a standardized backpack frame that the military made for a million years. So that's kind of the plan. But yeah, no, I don't see a lot of people making backpack printers.
Right.
Anytime soon.
Well, but you never know. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I might entertain it. But so now when you're doing the backpack printing and you're doing all the Delta printing and things like that when you practice, can you talk a little bit about what I've been through, and I think a lot of people have gone through the thought process differences between additive manufacturing, slicing, and subtractive manufacturing, CAM. Like, is it difficult to have both of those things in your brain? It was for me.
I'm still learning a lot about Fusion 360, and that's kind of becoming how do I explain it? So I built a CNC machine. I can,
Yeah, no, you built an open source one, right?
Yeah. So this is called the Print and See. It's over there. It's in the corner. But it's an open source one called the Print and See, and I've worked on it. It's like 3D printed, but it uses steel components and stuff you buy from AliExpress, and it's a really
Mitch, do you mind swooping over there again now that I have you in solo mode?
I can't really zoom in, but
okay,
you can see in the corner it's that purple silver thing. So the white thing is the cabinet, and then it's on top of the table, and the whole thing is it's a 2 by 3 foot cutting area. Roughly. So it's kind of like a router, but also can cut metal. It's like rigid enough to be a metal cutting machine.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool. So I've been on that Discord for about 3 years now, and it took me basically about 3 years so far to build that. So I finished last Christmas, and I made everybody's Christmas presents out of walnut. So I bought a whole bunch of walnut. First time doing real woodworking, and joined the local makerspace here. And so I've been, so I made a bunch of charcuterie boards and coasters, customized coasters. And then I laser etched the names and customize them on that too. So, but yeah, I just used the CNC to do profile cuts of the wood, and then I just hand finished the rest of them.
Interesting.
So the last project I'm working on is a jewelry box for my sister. She's not watching, so I can spoil it. I have it here. I can show you. So just kind of like learning Fusion 360 on how to do multiple operations with different processes. So like on the backpack printer, I can export the DXF of the sketch and then laser cut it. Right.
Yeah.
But also Fusion 360 has built-in CAM functionality. So a lot of stuff I've done, I can make an assembly. What's cool about the jewelry box, and this is a perfect example of additive and subtractive. So I made it so that you can CNC the parts with the miters using a V-bit. And so this is all CNC cut. Like I did not do any hand finishing. I didn't use a table saw or anything. Like I basically just took a 1/4-inch piece of walnut that I resawed and planed. So I did plane the wood, but then I used the CNC to actually cut the miters and the profiles.
You're better at Fusion 360 than you're letting on.
I think so. I'm getting there. I still feel like not confident enough with the CNC part of it, but basically this is laser etched, and then I did a resin inlay, and then what I wanted to do is, because the walnut was thin, it was 1/4-inch, I wanted to customize it so that I used a 3D printed insert. So I designed this so that the 3D printed insert would allow me to do some more intricate stuff for the hinges. So I have these nested hinges. So the hinges actually are inside there. But basically, this is a PLA part that I wrapped in felt. And this is an insert that goes into the walnut. So
wow.
I have the Fusion model actually has all this parametrically built. So I can get so I can customize the 3D printed part to fit the wood part. So like the wood part's the hard thing to replicate. The 3D printing part is easy. So I can adjust the 3D printed part to fit the wood
Got
versus
it.
having to have the wood fit the 3D printed part. And so so yeah, it's cool. So this is basically all parametric. So if I want to make a jewelry box any size, I can just have it generate the model. And theoretically, I can just have it once you nest all your parts, you can have the CNC cut all the parts out. As long as you have it nested, and then you should be able to assemble a jewelry box in any size. And then the 3D printed part will scale to that part, and then you just wrap the 3D printed part and then glue it inside.
What did you use to design the 3D printed parts?
It's all part of the Fusion model.
Oh, so it's all Fusion 360. Okay, wow.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, so
And
I pretty much used 3D. So Fusion 360 did the design with the multiple materials, and then the cam functionality of Fusion 360 made the box, the wood part, and then I just exported the body for the insert. I exported the insert as an STL file and put in Processizer. So I can basically take everything directly from Fusion 360 and send it to the machine, the respective machine.
Yeah. Speaking of Fusion 360, Mitch, did it finish updating?
I don't know yet. Hold on 1 second. It's gonna take forever. It's 95%. We'll get there. I'll show it later then. But yeah, so like these are all the projects I've been working to try to like. I guess I have been advancing my Fusion modeling experience. But what I like the best about stuff is having, first of all, like finding models that are already created. So nice. Having accurate models to start with on GrabCAD or whatever is really nice. But you know, the more detailed your assembly, the easier it is when you build the project. For this backpack printer, I don't have fasteners, but I basically made my own extrusion profiles so that I could assemble the extrusions. But how I did the extrusion frame on this backpack is I just used joints. So I just copied the same extrusion multiple times and then used joins so that they are, instead of being placed in place, I guess, based on because you can move components rigidly, but if you have them joined, at least if you move something, if you resize something, everything else follows it. So the same with the jewelry box. All these individual panels are a joint, so that I could do like in the Fusion model, I can actually open and close the lid with the hinge like moving.
Wow.
Lid. So like you can see if you have any clearance issues, right? Like you can see if there's going to be any interference if you move the hinge or something. So very basic like assembly stuff in Fusion, but you can definitely break models really easily doing that. The other thing too is I'm still really bad at making stuff constrained properly, and the other thing you want to do is you want to limit all your projection references, because if you change one thing and then the projection's referencing or your other component is referencing a projection from another component and you change something, then you'll break everything down the line. So the more you can like reference off of the origin, the better. There's a lot of little tricks for Fusion that I'm finding, and I'll have really messy models and then I'll have to go back and like recreate it because it's so messy.
Yeah, well, what's the hard part about that though, Mitch, is that the only way to find out that your model is messy, the only way I found out is by trying to cut it, failing, and being like, oh man, I gotta buy another sheet of plywood. That is
Yeah, and so this jewelry box is one of those examples. Is that I had enough walnut left over to make just this box. I had just enough. I had 2 pieces of walnut. Or I had about a 24-inch piece of walnut that I resawed into 2 quarter-inch pieces. So I had just enough material to cut, and then I had to recut at least 1 or 2 panels of this because it was undersized. So I have like maybe 2 or 3 little scraps of walnut, but like I wasn't gonna pay for more walnuts, so like I had to be really careful on every step to make sure like I, didn't. I made sure everything matched the fusion model almost exactly, but because I made it parametric, my parts actually came a little undersized because of how the V-bit was referenced, so it actually cut a little bit smaller than it was supposed to. And so I just took the fusion model and actually just shrunk it to the actual size of the cut part. And that way all the other parts referenced, the 3D printed parts actually referenced to that. So that's why I use 3D printing, is because it's so much cheaper and easier than replacing wood. So I think that's a really smart way to do woodworking, is just incorporating 3D printed parts on the detailed stuff and then woodworking on the stuff that you're going to see that looks nice.
Good point.
So that's like a way to cheat around like a cost of wood. But like plywood, if you you just measure twice, cut once. That's essentially the trick to CNCing.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, it's oh no, I've wasted tons of plywood, but that's the other thing too, is just getting cheap material and test cutting. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's I have a bunch of scrap plywood, but even plywood's not cheap. I mean, it was really expensive to get some plywood, and even to build the workbench for my CNC was like, that was back when wood was like double the price
because of COVID.
The pandemic.
Yeah, 2021 was like the worst time to buy plywood.
Yeah, I mean, I as a non-frequent flyer in the wood aisle, it all feels pretty darn expensive. But
and that's why going to the woodworking, I was like, so I have a local wood place. So all this walnut I bought for all the gifts, it was $8 a board foot, which is like, really cheap for walnut.
That is cheap. That's hugely cheap. Wow.
So I bought a whole bunch of walnut, but I was expecting to spend over $100, and it was like $85, and I got like 4 charcuterie boards, 6 sets of coasters, this jewelry box, and like another smaller cutting board. So I got like enough gifts from both sides of my family for basically like $80 worth of plywood. But that's not including all the like $200 worth of supplies and tooling. The tooling got really expensive. That's a big part of it that you don't realize, is that, router bits, or
$35,
or finishing, like, like finishing oil and stains and brushes, and it's the supplies that actually end up costing more for woodworking, I think. I have wood glue and I have clamps and basic woodworking stuff.
Karen has a call back. You just get your wood with your bare hands.
I did cut down some cherry branches. I've been thinking about what to do with that. So
cherries are great. That's actually, I was thinking about doing next is cherry, because it would be cheaper for me to figure out instead of walnut. But it looks great when you finish it. Yeah.
Or even, I mean, God forbid, even you have to do it outside. No, you wouldn't be able to do that. But even if you just maybe did 1/2-inch foam as your prototype, so you get everything to fit, and then move over to wood, that might be just as well too.
Woodworking is an interesting hobby coming from a non-woodworking, right? If you come from 3D printing, you're like, oh, that's just easy. I'll just whip it out and Fusion or Tinkercad and print it out. It looks awesome. And then you realize to make the same thing out of wood, like people had to whittle it or carve it with like custom carving things, and like it's crazy, and splintering and tear out and knots and filling stuff with epoxy, and 3D printing is easy compared to woodworking. Oh my god! Oh, so I had a Lego phase, as you can tell. I probably I'm a grew up on Lego stuff, and that's where I kind of had all this robotics interest. 20 So during the lockdown, COVID lockdown, I got into Lego GBC, which is the Great Ball Challenge.
Yeah.
You ever look on Lego and you see the Lego Brick World, and you see like they have a bunch of modules, and so these modules, the rules for the module is that you have to have an input bin and an output. And so they're basically standardized Lego soccer balls. They're 14 millimeters. And the Lego
They
soccer
don't make
balls
those anymore either.
What was that?
They don't make the balls anymore.
No, they don't. So they're about $1 a piece if you go on Bricklink, and they're really expensive. So I only have 20 of them, but I spent way more than that on Lego. And I built the modules that some people upload their Lego instructions online. And so I got a bunch of Lego instructions, and then I broke them down into their bombs, and then I ordered all the parts on Bricklink, and then I built 7 modules or 8 modules. So I had enough modules to make my own loop on my dining room table, and I had some really interesting ones that use like Lego gears that could do like these really cool like kinematic things, and some that like would like stair step the balls up and stuff. So if you ever look up Lego GBC, it's a whole nother world. And I only just got into that, and then I moved, and so all my Lego stuff is just in the bin somewhere here in the basement, and I haven't even touched it since COVID. So between like Lego GBC and what was that Animal Crossing game? That's pretty much what I did for.
I did Animal Crossing too.
Yeah, the New Horizons. Yeah, everybody was playing that game.
Yeah.
Now my house is full of roaches or ants now because we never log in. Animal Crossing.
Oh, I didn't know that happened. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you come in when you go into your place. There's like little some kind of insect.
I'm sure all my villagers hate me. And then I also got into game modding. So I have been working on. I redid my Game Boy Advance with a new color screen, new shell. I built a portable Wii. So you take a Nintendo Wii and you cut it down into the bare components. You actually cut the board physically. People have actually reverse engineered the original Wii motherboard so that you can cut it down to the bare minimum, and then you solder a bunch of little tiny wires, and you basically make a Wii that it fits in like to a Game Boy shell, a 3D printed Game Boy shell. So,
but what about the games? The games are on discs.
It's a modded Wii that can run ISO images, Wii ISO images on an SD card. So it's actually running off an SD card, and then it's USB-C power. It actually runs off of a 18650 battery. So there's a whole portabilizing community where people take original hardware. They've portabilized an N64. I think somebody's worked on an original Xbox. They've actually trimmed an original Xbox. I think I don't know about the PlayStation, but modern consoles now with CDs, you can actually do optical disc emulators. So now they can replace the optical drives with an SD card reader. And then the other big thing was I did an N64 mod where they have one that you solder the video traces to the CPU, and basically it's like micro soldering. It's really difficult, but it does an HDMI upscaling, so you can natively play your N64 games on a HDMI screen, and it has like pixel perfect accuracy. So yeah, the modding community is crazy. Some guy took the original Nintendo processor, and literally cut the chip into a smaller chip so that you can make a Game Boy sized original NES from the original chipset. Yeah, so it's crazy what they're doing. They're basically reverse engineering all this original game hardware. Now you can mod your like old GameCubes with a Raspberry Pi Pico and run all your games off of an SD card with just a simple like a $4 Pi Pico.
Wow.
So yeah.
Staggering.
Game modding. So yeah, the problem is I get into all these hobbies and spend a lot of money, and then I move on to the next project, and then they just collect dust. So
yeah, no,
But then
you're a maker.
one
I can
day
understand
there's
that.
a project like your backpack printer that
Yeah.
involves multiple.
Yeah, and that's worked out because I have gotten people to sponsor me. I've had E3D send me the Revo for the last backpack printer, the 713 maker. He made those aluminum parts. You know, I've had talked to Duet and Slice Engineering, and but like Sliceworks sponsoring this next trip is going to be really cool. It's kind of cool to work with a filament company, and building this backpack. So this is going to be a somewhat unique design. So it'll be kind of cool to see everybody at Rocky Mountain. I don't know who is going. I know you're on the East Coast, so it's probably going to be difficult. But Rocky Mountain's going to be a really cool event.
Yeah, I'm hearing really, really great things about it. Yeah. Yep. So Vicky, I don't have any more questions. Did you?
Yeah, I just did want to have a little team meeting. It's we're at 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Yep.
So how's your Fusion 360? I think you have showered us with lots of information and a lot of things to absorb. So it's okay if the screen sharing doesn't work out.
Let me restart Fusion and give me 1 second and I'll load it. But I don't want to go over my time, but I obviously have a lot of hobbies and things to talk about. So
while he's going over that,
and I knew you were the best guest for Lawrence. Right?
Yeah, no, we can definitely talk.
It's good
we
to
can
actually
talk on Discord or whatever you want. But so I am active on the Polymaker. I'm a CNC ambassador on Polymaker's Discord. That's my latest thing. I'm on what's my other public? I'm on a lot of Discord servers, so if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm always on Discord and on Twitter. Obviously, that's how I know everybody from Twitter.
And you can find a whole bunch of links
about him on. So I'm too cheap to pay for a website, so I'm using GitHub pages, and I have a static HTML page that's just a link page, and that's mitch3d.com. So, I don't have a lot of stuff on GitHub. I'm really bad at documenting stuff because I move on to different projects and then don't document them. So that's the same with YouTube, is that if I have to make something on YouTube, I'd have to remember to film every part of it. And then I have to spend a week trying to psych myself up to edit the video. So
that's one reason we do this is live stream.
Yes.
So we don't have to edit.
Yeah. And I have a Twitch and I've live streamed on Twitch. It's just not I'm not consistent because of, burnout. So, burnout is a whole nother topic if you ever want to talk about that, I'm sure. Let me share my screen. I'll show you the latest backpack printer.
Which for people just joining us or who joined us late, this is Mitch's Rocky Mount RepRap Festival project.
Yep. So this is a sneak preview because I don't think I really shared it outside of Discord. But if you can see that.
So this is kind of a scoop. Well, YouTube scoop.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Well, it's also like 2 weeks away, and I'm over promising and hopefully over delivering. But it was kind of one of those things. I'm like, oh yeah, I can have this. I feature creep myself to try to get like everything I wanted out of it, and then I realized that I had 4 weeks to work on it. But yeah, and then getting sick didn't help me. So I was at home, so I was like, well, I might as well CAD model while I'm sitting here sick. But
so you showed us the spool holder earlier.
Yeah, so this is the spool holder. So in order for all this to work, is I basically had 10 extrusions at the same length, and so I made the frame work around the extrusions I already had. So I basically didn't have to cut any extrusions. I only had to cut 2 extrusions. And I don't have to tap any of them because I'm using 90-degree brackets that slot in, and and then the frame is actually going to mount with standoffs. So these are just standoff spacers, and then I'm going to use M5 bolts that go through the plastic frame, the rigid frame part. So it's not these side panels are going to be laser cut acrylic. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I made it set up so that I can have a hinge door for the front, and it'll have magnets here. So it's kind of based on the Voron enclosures that I've seen. And then this will be like a place I can put a logo. So I kind of just left this blank intentionally so that I can add anything I want later. If you see on the original backpack printers, I've had I use these little cheap LED name badges, and it's really handy because they show up well on camera, and I can have my name and LEDs. So I'm thinking if I have time, I'm going to put LEDs inside the enclosure so that you can see, because a lot of times you can't really see what it's printing while I'm walking around. So the more I can highlight the printer, the better. And of course, the unique colors that Sliceworks has given me. He's trying to show off. So this is a DeWalt yellow. This is a Ryobi green, and this is a Makita cyan color. So he actually has filament that matches the brands of drills.
Is this this the filament that smells like vanilla?
Yeah, and that's actually really cool. I was really surprised. Obviously, I was sick, so I couldn't smell it. But for the last couple batches of prints, I was really surprised how good it smells. Their filament's pretty good. And the PLA Pro is pretty tough. I mean, I've dropped parts a couple times and they don't shatter. So,
wow.
But I did orient a lot of these parts when I was printing. I had to cut them up because the Artemis is. I wanted to lay the parts flat, but the Delta printer only has a 300 millimeter diameter, so I can't lay a lot of the long parts, across the diameter. So. I basically I used the split body tool and split the model up into segments, and then I just reassemble it afterwards. So I'm using 3D Gloop for everything. 3D Gloop, and then it's all M5 bolts and the T-nuts holding the thing to the frame. So I'm hoping that the 3D Gloop is strong enough to. It should be stronger than the PLA itself.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about 3D Gloop.
If you clamp it, if you have gaps, I'm finding that can be a weak point. So these are printed lengthwise so that the strength is in the grain, the layer grain, and so I'm hoping that will actually make this more rigid than if I was to print it upright. But I don't. These parts are so thick, I don't think I'm going to have problems with like breaking on the layer lines. Like. Well, see, I broke it on the gloop side, so I'm gonna have to go back and make sure that these are glooped properly. But so I'm kind of working on that. The only thing I printed upright, so these are actually printed upright because I couldn't find a way to. So I have a lot of support material on a lot of these parts, and this one was kind of hard to print, so I printed upright.
That's the front panel, isn't it?
That's the front part with the logo, and then the feet underneath it. So because I have to have room for the batteries to be under the frame.
Yep.
So I need to be able to put it down on the table. So I basically back up to the table and then drop it. And so I want it to drop on the feet. So these feet have to be strong enough to hold the printer, and then have enough room for the batteries underneath it. So that's kind of my plan. Yeah, and then the spool holder is always a challenge because when you're moving around, the spool is unraveling as you go. So there's challenges with that too. Most of the time, I can fix that by putting a reverse Bowden tube that has enough friction to prevent it from like rolling back when it retracts. But as long as it doesn't fall off when I'm moving around, like I've the original one, I had the spool holder on the backside, and I'd run into people or something, and the spool holder would pop off. And so,
wow.
the closer the center of gravity is to my back, the more comfortable it is. So anything that's protruding,
which is the same with like backpacking, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh, exactly, yeah. But like creating a 3D printer and the spool and the power supply and everything that isn't sticking out past my width. So nothing is gonna go past the width of me. So if I go through a doorway, and I think it will only stick out it's only sticking out about 12 inches from my back. So it's not really gonna be super cumbersome.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've thought about everything because I've had people bump into me, and I was so afraid of people, either catching cables. I've had cables get caught on something or a filament or something like that. So you kind of have to keep everything self-contained, and low center of gravity. So the batteries being at the bottom is going to be a lot more comfortable than the old one where I had the batteries at the top. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to hopefully you coming out to the East Coast.
He'll be there.
I will be at 3D Printopia somehow. If I have to drive 15 hours, I will.
And possibly with a mixtape, right?
Yeah, I can make a mixtape for you, sure. I need to find 3D printing related songs. Actually, we thought about doing a rap.
Karen in the chat, she has a Twitter, an X thread where, it was mostly about slicing, but she slice baby, and other people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We were playing with Chat GPT to make 3D printer related stuff too. That was kind of funny, but yeah, I'll look that up. That's funny. We should have a musical. Oh, I've talked to Joe Mike. We were talking about making 3D printing a drum set because we're both drummers. And I would love to have a full 3D printed band with Chris Riley. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
we need to make that happen someday.
Yep. There was a hot end manufacturer, Canadian company that they 3D printed a.
Yeah, they were at
that was the East Coast
1 year, right?
2019. What'd you say?
Yeah, that was the Earth 2019. They had a 3D printed drum set.
Yeah,
that would be cool. Now we have the Orange Giga and the big printers. I think it'd be a lot more capable. Yeah, but I think you could still make drum shells with 3D gloop and sections. I think.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tension is inward, so it lends itself to getting stronger anyhow with the
glue. You're right. The right kind of joinery with dovetails and stuff, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Wow. Mitch, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time and so much of your history and all of the buzzwords. And
I know
I have a lot of battery stuff that I didn't.
Now
I know.
I honestly don't know enough about batteries to be an expert, but Bob Carnes on Twitter and Discord, he is the battery expert if you ask him. So he's my battery expert. But it helps to have an RC background, a robot RC background to kind of know about battery chemistry and charging and discharging and stuff. So
wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mitch. And viewers, thank you so much. I was having trouble keeping up with the chat, but you were amazing. You cracked me up. You had insightful comments. You just were really good. Thank you for being so engaged, and thank you for sharing your Prime Tuesday evening with us. As our little usual wrap up, we do this How Would You Slice This show on Tuesdays that are prime numbers. And so the next one is going to be in 3 weeks on April 23rd, 2024. We love that we're doing this for the community, and we would love community involvement, just like you're doing in the chat. So if you are ever interested in joining us on screen, you can sign up to be a guest on howwouldyouslicethat.com. If there is a particular model that you'd like to, just have us share or talk about how we go about slicing that, you can submit that as well, also on howwouldyouslicethat.com. I wish I could have the adequate words to thank everybody for participating in this. I'm very grateful. And also, Lawrence, I forgot you. Thank you. I knew this was almost like a gift to you.
Thank you so much.
I've had lots of
coming on
time to
here.
be with Mitch, and this was your time to.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for letting me.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the Rose Project. Did you want to mention that?
Oh, all right. You know what? I do. Yeah. Since we have some people still watching. Hold on. I have that up here. Just especially if you are heading to Rocky Mount RepRap Festival in a few weeks. Hopefully you've already heard of this. If not, STL Denise and 3D Print Bunny are doing this amazing community artwork. They want each person to print one rose, and they're just asking in colors of blue. And you bring it down. It's first going to show up at Rocky Mount RepRap Festival, but it's going to go to all of them, including 3D Printopia in September. And at the end, it's going to go over to the Sanjay Mortimer RepRap Festival over in England. And then it's going to be auctioned off to benefit, I think, the Sanjay Mortimer Fund. And so, yeah, they just want one rose from each person. And there's a better picture here.
And my backpack printer will print one at Rocky Mountain.
Oh, that's perfect. And so, yeah, and a perfect little segue back to the backpack printer there. Yeah, so they interconnect. And so it is important that you print it at, the scale that it comes in, and, because you want to make sure that it has the tolerances to fit with the other roses.
Wow.
Okay, and probably my final act. I'll throw this into the chat for everybody if they don't have it. And I think that's all we have for tonight, though we might have to have you back, Mitch, for another a part 2.
Yeah, we could just talk about Legos for the entire Lego, not Legos, if you're
Lego. Yeah. Somebody will call you out on that. Very good for catching that. Yes.
All right. Again, thank you, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you on April 23rd.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.